if you'll just restrain yourself from butting into things that don't concern you.
Oh, come on, Mr. B. You make it sound as if I go around butting into all kinds of stuff. I don't do that.
From secret age deceptions and tragic real-life endings to million-dollar voice lawsuits and mysterious disappearing lampposts, the beloved 1960s sitcom Hazel harbored some truly bizarre behind-the-scenes secrets. This wholesome family show about a take-charge maid, concealed casting controversies, product placement gone wild, and connections to TV's most iconic neighborhoods. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Hazel. Fact 1. The creepy original Mr. Baxter. When the pilot episode of Hazel was filmed in 1961, character actor Edward Andrews was cast as George Baxter, the husband who would share his home with the opinionated maid. Andrews was a veteran performer with extensive experience in both film and television, known for playing authority figures and businessmen. He filmed the entire pilot episode, working alongside Shirley Booth and the rest of the cast, with the production team fully expecting him to continue in the role throughout the series. However, when Screen Gems showed the pilot to test audiences, something unexpected happened. Viewers found Andrews unsettling in the role, describing him as having a quality that made them uncomfortable. The feedback consistently used words like creepy and off-putting to describe his performance, even though Andrews was simply playing the character as written. The producers faced a difficult decision because they had already invested significant time and money into filming the pilot with Andrews in the lead male role. Despite this, they knew that audience reaction was crucial to the show's success, especially since the entire premise relied on viewers welcoming the Baxter family into their living rooms week after week. Screen Gems made the expensive choice to bring in Don DeFore, a friendly-faced actor best known for playing the neighbor Thorny on The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, to replace Andrews. DeFore brought a warmer, more approachable quality to George Baxter that audiences immediately responded to positively. The entire pilot had to be reshot with DeFore before the series could premiere, making it one of the most costly casting changes in early television history. Fact 2. Shirley Booth shaved 9 years off her age. Shirley Booth had already won every major acting award by the time she agreed to star in Hazel, including 3 Tony Awards for her stage work and an Academy Award for her performance in the film Come Back, Little Sheba. Despite her impressive credentials, Booth was deeply concerned about her age when transitioning to television in the early 1960s. Hollywood had always been unforgiving to aging actresses, and television was no exception. To make herself more marketable and to compete with younger stars, Booth made a deliberate decision to lie about her birth year. Instead of admitting she was born in 1898, which would have made her 63 when Hazel premiered, she claimed to have been born in 1907, shaving 9 full years off her real age. This deception was remarkably successful because Booth maintained strict control over the information, sharing the truth only with her closest associates who were sworn to secrecy. Publicity materials, interviews, and even official studio biographies all listed the false birth year of 1907. The lie held up throughout her entire career, through all 5 seasons of Hazel, and even through her retirement years. It wasn't until Booth passed away in October of 1992 that the truth finally came out. Her death announcement revealed her actual birth year of 1898, shocking fans and colleagues who had believed the false information for more than 3 decades. The revelation meant that Booth had been 71 years old when she retired from Hazel, not the 62 years old that everyone had assumed. Fact 3. The $4 million voice lawsuit that failed. After Hazel ended its run in 1966, Shirley Booth's distinctive voice remained one of the most recognizable sounds in American entertainment. In 1971, Colgate-Palmolive produced a series of animated commercials for their household cleaning products that featured a cartoon character named Hazel. This animated Hazel was clearly based on the television character, wearing a similar maid's uniform and exhibiting the same bossy but lovable personality. Most notably, the cartoon character spoke with a voice that sounded remarkably similar to Shirley Booth's unique vocal qualities. Booth was never contacted about these commercials, never gave permission for her likeness or voice to be used, and received no compensation. She believed that Colgate was deliberately trading on her fame and her years of work building the character without paying her for it. Booth filed a lawsuit against Colgate-Palmolive seeking $4 million in damages, arguing that the unauthorized use of a voice so similar to hers damaged her professional reputation and violated her rights. She claimed that the association with a cleaning product cheapened her image as a serious actress who had won an Oscar and multiple Emmy Awards. The case went to court, where Booth's lawyers argued that her voice was as distinctive and protected as her physical appearance. However, the judge ultimately dismissed the lawsuit, ruling that voice similarity alone was not enough to prove that Colgate had violated Booth's rights. Despite losing the case, the lawsuit became an important precedent in intellectual property law and is still cited today in legal discussions about voice rights, celebrity impersonation, and the unauthorized commercial use of distinctive personal characteristics. Fact 4. Child star's tragic bridge. Death.
Oh, why?
A napkin? A napkin? Oh.
Bobby Buntrock played Harold Baxter, the adorable son on Hazel, from the time he was 7 years old until the show ended when he was 11. The role made him one of the most recognizable child actors of the 1960s, and after Hazel concluded, he continued working in television with guest appearances on various shows. However, Bobby never achieved the same level of fame he had enjoyed on Hazel, and by his late teens, he had largely stepped away from acting. On April 23, 1974, Bobby was traveling through Keystone, South Dakota, with his mother, visiting family in the area. That spring had brought particularly heavy flooding to South Dakota, and many roads and bridges were damaged or completely washed out. Bobby, who was driving, approached a bridge over Cisco Creek in the family car. What he didn't know was that the floodwaters had severely damaged the structure of the bridge, making it unsafe to cross. There were no warning signs posted, no barriers blocking the road, and no indication that the bridge was dangerous. Bobby drove onto the bridge, and the damaged structure immediately gave way beneath the weight of the vehicle. The car plunged into the swollen creek below, which was much deeper and faster moving than normal due to the spring floods. Bobby was 21 years old at the time. Investigators later determined that he survived the initial crash and tried desperately to escape from the submerged vehicle, but the force of the floodwater and the position of the car made escape impossible. He drowned in the wreckage before rescuers could reach him. His mother also perished in the accident. Fact 5. Hazel's mom created one day at a time. Whitney Blake played Dorothy Baxter, the lady of the house who had to share authority with the strong-willed Hazel for the first 4 seasons of the show. Blake was a capable actress who held her own against Shirley Booth's dominating presence, creating a character who was gracious but occasionally exasperated by her maid's constant interference. However, Blake's most significant contribution to television came after Hazel ended. In her personal life, Blake had divorced her husband and found herself raising 3 daughters as a single mother, navigating the challenges of dating, finances, and parenting alone in an era when divorce was still somewhat stigmatized. These experiences gave Blake a deep understanding of the struggles faced by divorced women trying to build independent lives. In the mid-1970s, Blake partnered with television producer Alan Mannings to create a new sitcom that would address these issues head-on. The result was One Day at a Time, which premiered on CBS in 1975 and became one of the most groundbreaking and successful sitcoms of its era. The show followed Ann Romano, a divorced mother raising two teenage daughters on her own while building a career and navigating the dating world. Blake drew heavily from her own experiences to create authentic storylines that resonated with millions of viewers. One Day at a Time ran for 9 seasons and tackled serious issues rarely addressed in sitcoms, including divorce, single, parenthood, women's independence, and economic struggles. Blake's own daughter, Meredith Baxter, went on to become a major television star herself, playing Elise Keaton on Family Ties, creating a remarkable mother-daughter legacy in television history. Fact 6. The bewitched house was next door. The exterior shots of the Baxter family home were filmed on a residential street at Columbia Ranch, one of the major studio backlots used for television production in the 1960s. The specific street was known as Blondie Street because it had originally been built for the Blondie film series in the 1940s. Screen Gems, which produced Hazel, owned Columbia Ranch and used the various residential sets there for multiple shows simultaneously. The Baxter house was a 2-story colonial-style home with a front porch and a driveway that ran along the side of the property. In various episodes of Hazel, you can see the neighboring houses when characters look out windows or when scenes show the street view. One of these neighboring houses, visible from the Baxter driveway, was a single-story ranch-style home with distinctive modern architecture. In 1964, 3 years after Hazel premiered, Screen Gems began production on another sitcom called Bewitched, starring Elizabeth Montgomery as a witch trying to live as a suburban housewife. The producers needed an exterior location for the home of Samantha and Darren Stevens, and they chose the same Blondie Street at Columbia Ranch. The house they selected for Bewitched was the exact same ranch-style house that had been visible as the Baxter's neighbor on Hazel. This meant that for 2 years, from 1964 until Hazel ended in 1966, both shows were using the same street, with Hazel and the Stevenses theoretically living next door to each other. Viewers who paid close attention to background details could spot the same houses, trees, and street features appearing on both shows. Fact 7. First TV show to feature the Mustang.
I could give him his breakfast later, then we could...
No one in this family is going to leave the breakfast table to chase fire engines.
Ford Motor Company was one of the primary sponsors of Hazel throughout the show's run on NBC. And this sponsorship relationship led to one of the most significant product placement moments in television history. In 1964, Ford was preparing to launch a revolutionary new car called the Mustang, a sporty and affordable vehicle that would become one of the most iconic American automobiles ever produced. Ford planned a massive publicity campaign with the official public unveiling scheduled for April 17, 1964, at the World's Fair in New York. However, Ford's advertising team realized they had an opportunity to generate buzz before the official launch by featuring the Mustang on one of their sponsored television programs. They approached the producers of Hazel and arranged for the new car to appear in an episode scheduled to air on Thursday, April 16, 1964, the night before the official unveiling. The Mustang was written into the episode's storyline and featured prominently in several scenes, giving millions of American viewers their very first look at the groundbreaking vehicle. The car also appeared in the opening credits sequence, ensuring that even casual viewers would notice it. This made Hazel the first television show ever to showcase the Ford Mustang, beating every other program, and even Ford's own official promotional events. The strategic placement worked brilliantly as a marketing tool, creating enormous curiosity and excitement about the new model. By the time the Mustang officially debuted the next day, people across America were already talking about the stylish car they had seen on Hazel the night before. Fact 8. Shirley Booth wore the same wig every episode. Shirley Booth was already in her 60s when she began playing Hazel, and maintaining the character's appearance consistently across 5 seasons and 154 episodes presented unique challenges. Booth's natural hair was thin and gray, which didn't match the image the producers wanted for the energetic, capable maid who could handle any household crisis. The solution was to have Booth wear a wig specifically designed for the character. The wig featured short, curly brown hair with a style that became instantly recognizable as Hazel's signature look. What many viewers didn't realize was that Booth wore this exact same wig, or identical replacements of it, in every single episode throughout the entire series run. The consistency was important for maintaining the character's visual identity, but it also created an unusual situation where Hazel's hair never changed, never grew, and never varied even slightly, despite the passage of 5 years in both real-time and show continuity. However, there were occasional exceptions to this rule that sharp-eyed viewers might notice. In certain episodes that featured flashback sequences showing events from Hazel's past, the producers made the creative decision to have Booth remove the wig and use her real hair instead. The reasoning was that using her natural gray hair would help signal to viewers that they were watching scenes from an earlier time period. These brief glimpses of Booth without the Hazel wig created an interesting contrast, showing the real woman behind the character and revealing just how different Shirley Booth actually looked from the maid she portrayed. The wig became so associated with the character that when fans met Booth in person, they often expressed surprise at her actual appearance. Fact 9. Don DeFore's power saw accident. Written in Don DeFore, who played George Baxter, was an experienced actor, but also enjoyed working with his hands and doing projects around his own home. During the early part of Hazel's production, DeFore was working on a home improvement project when he had a serious accident with a power saw. The saw slipped during use and severely injured DeFore's hand, completely severing one of his fingers. The injury required immediate medical attention and left DeFore with bandages covering his hand that would need to remain in place for several weeks during the healing process. This created a significant problem for the production team because several episodes were scheduled to film during DeFore's recovery period, and there was no way to hide the prominent bandaging on his hand during scenes. The show's writers had to quickly come up with an explanation for why George Baxter would suddenly have an injured hand wrapped in bandages. Rather than trying to conceal the bandages through careful camera angles or having DeFore hold his hand out of frame, which would have been awkward and limiting for the actor, the writers decided to incorporate the injury directly into the show's storyline. They wrote dialogue explaining that George had injured his hand by catching a baseball barehanded that Hazel had thrown to him. This explanation fit perfectly with the show's dynamic of Hazel being overly enthusiastic and accidentally causing problems despite her good intentions. The baseball story was mentioned casually in the episodes filmed during DeFore's recovery, allowing viewers to understand why George was bandaged without making a major plot point out of the injury. Fact 10. The mysterious appearing lamppost.
When are you going to open your presents?
Oh, probably after dinner.
Good. I haven't got mine wrapped yet.
Television shows filmed on studio backlots often reused the same sets, streets, and properties across multiple episodes and even across different series, which means that careful viewers can usually track the various set pieces and identify when and where they appear. Columbia Ranch, where Hazel's exterior shots were filmed, has been extensively documented by television historians who have cataloged the various buildings, streets, and decorative elements used in dozens of shows over several decades. However, one particular episode of Hazel features a prop that has baffled these location experts and remains unexplained to this day. In this episode, there is a distinctive metal lamppost with a white globe top positioned in the Baxter's front yard area. The lamppost is clearly visible in multiple shots and appears to be a permanent fixture of the property. The unusual aspect is that this specific lamppost with its particular design and globe-style light fixture appears in this one episode and then is never seen again in any other episode of Hazel throughout the show's entire 5-season run. Even more mysteriously, researchers who have studied the Columbia Ranch backlot extensively have found no evidence of this lamppost appearing in any other television show that was filmed at the same location, either before or after Hazel. The lamppost seems to have appeared for this single episode and then vanished completely. Theories about its origin range from the practical, such as it being a temporary prop brought in for this specific episode's storyline, to the possibility that it was part of a set redressing. That was quickly reversed. However, no production records or crew interviews have surfaced to explain why this particular lamppost was used once and never again. Fact 11. NAACP boycott. Threat change production. In the summer of 1963, the civil rights movement was reaching a critical point in American society, with activists and organizations pushing for integration and equal opportunities in all areas of life, including the entertainment industry. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, known as the NAACP, had been monitoring the hiring practices of television shows and noticed that many programs, including Hazel, had all-white production crews, despite the shows being sponsored by major corporations. In July of 1963, the NAACP specifically targeted Ford Motor Company, which was the primary sponsor of Hazel, with a threat of an organized boycott of Ford vehicles unless the company used its influence to ensure that the shows it sponsored hired black technical staff members. The NAACP's demand wasn't about on-camera representation in this particular case, but rather about behind-the-scenes employment opportunities in positions like camera operators, sound technicians, editors, and other production roles that were almost exclusively filled by white workers at the time. Ford took the threat seriously because a boycott by the black community would have significantly impacted their sales, and the company put pressure on Screen Gems and the producers of Hazel to address the NAACP's concerns. 2 months later, in September of 1963, the producers of Hazel made a public announcement that they had hired a black production executive to work on the show. The announcement was clearly timed to respond to the NAACP's threat and to demonstrate that Ford-sponsored programming was taking steps toward integration. While this represented progress, it was also a reminder of how much pressure was required to create even small changes in the industry's discriminatory hiring practices. Fact 12. The bizarre Baghdad exile.
I could give him his breakfast later, then we could...
No one in this family is going to leave the breakfast table to chase fire engines.
When Hazel moved from NBC to CBS for its 5th and final season in 1965, the show underwent massive changes that shocked loyal viewers. Don DeFore and Whitney Blake, who had played George and Dorothy Baxter for the first 4 seasons, did not return to the series. This meant that the show's producers needed to explain where the original Baxter parents had gone and why they were no longer part of Hazel's life. The explanation they came up with was extraordinarily strange and inconsistent. According to the new storyline, George and Dorothy Baxter had moved to Baghdad, Iraq, where George had apparently taken a job. This was already an unusual choice, as Baghdad was not a typical destination for American businessmen in 1965, and the show provided no real explanation for why George would relocate to the Middle East. Even more bizarrely, the show couldn't seem to decide on the spelling or pronunciation of the city. In some episodes, characters referred to the location as Baghdad with the traditional spelling, while in other episodes, particularly when George and Dorothy called home, they mentioned calling from Baghdad with alternate spelling as if they were in a completely different place. Adding to the strangeness of this plot development was the decision about what happened to Harold, the Baxters' young son, who had been a central character in the first 4 seasons. Rather than having Harold move to Baghdad with his parents, the writers chose to leave him behind in America. The explanation was that Harold would now live with his uncle Steve Baxter, George's brother, who had never been mentioned even once during the previous 4 seasons of the show. Fact 13. Shirley Booth financed the CBS revival.
You feeling all right?
Certainly, why?
Colors off.
When NBC decided to cancel Hazel after 4 successful seasons in 1965, it seemed like the show might be finished for good. However, Shirley Booth had a personal and financial stake in keeping the show alive that went beyond her role as the star. Booth had negotiated an unusual contract that gave her partial ownership rights to the Hazel character and the show itself, meaning she would continue to earn money from the program as long as it remained in production. Beyond the financial considerations, Booth was also genuinely attached to the character and wasn't ready to retire from television. CBS expressed interest in picking up Hazel for a 5th season, but the network was hesitant about the costs involved in reviving a show that another network had just canceled. To make the deal work and convince CBS to take a chance on the show, Booth made an extraordinary commitment. She personally agreed to help finance the production of the 5th season, essentially putting her own money on the line to keep Hazel on the air. This was an extremely unusual arrangement, as television stars rarely invested their own funds into production costs. Booth's willingness to take on this financial risk demonstrated her belief in the show and her desire to continue playing the character. However, by the time CBS officially committed to producing the 5th season, Don DeFore and Whitney Blake had already moved on to other professional commitments. Both actors had assumed that Hazel was permanently finished and had accepted roles in other projects, making it impossible for them to return even though Booth had successfully saved the show. This created the situation where Hazel continued for another season, but with an entirely new family for her to work for. Fact 14. Hidden Magic Hairspray's disastrous side effects.
Those are prunes.
Well, you need prunes.
I do not need prunes. I need strawberries.
Your color's off. You need prunes.
I want strawberries.
Television sponsorship in the 1960s worked very differently than advertising does today, with sponsors often having their products directly integrated into the shows they funded. Hazel had multiple sponsors throughout its run, and one of them was a hairspray product called Hidden Magic. The product was marketed as an innovative aerosol hairspray that would provide superior hold while remaining invisible in the hair, hence the hidden in its name. Hidden Magic received prominent placement during Hazel's commercial breaks and was sometimes even mentioned or shown during the show itself as part of integrated advertising. However, Hidden Magic Hairspray turned out to have some serious and completely unexpected problems that made it one of the most notorious product failures of the era. Consumers who purchased and used Hidden Magic began reporting bizarre and disturbing side effects that the manufacturer had apparently never discovered during product testing. One of the most alarming reports was that the hairspray seemed to attract bees and other insects, with users experiencing incidents where bees would swarm around their hair after applying the product. The exact chemical compound in the hairspray that attracted insects was never publicly identified, but the reports were widespread enough to cause serious concern. An even more visually shocking problem emerged among users who had bleached or color-treated blonde hair. These consumers discovered that Hidden Magic Hairspray reacted with the chemicals in hair bleach and caused their hair to turn a greenish color. The green tint was difficult to remove and required additional chemical treatments or simply waiting for the affected hair to grow out. These disasters led to Hidden Magic Hairspray being pulled from the market relatively quickly. Fact 15. Burt Lancaster warned her not to do TV.
I know why she only wants to give me 3 pancakes. She's saving the rest to give to somebody else.
George, what a weird idea.
By 1961, Shirley Booth had achieved everything a stage actress could dream of accomplishing, with 3 Tony Awards for her Broadway performances, establishing her as one of the greatest theatrical talents of her generation. She had then made a successful transition to film, winning the Academy Award for Best Actress for her heartbreaking performance in Comeback Little Sheba in 1952. At this point in her career, Booth was considered a serious dramatic actress with impeccable credentials in both theater and cinema. When she was offered the lead role in Hazel, a television sitcom about a maid, Booth hesitated because of the significant stigma that still existed around television work in the early 1960s. Many film and theater actors considered television to be beneath them, a medium for performers who couldn't succeed in more prestigious formats. Booth discussed the offer with several colleagues and friends, including actor Burt Lancaster, who had worked with her and respected her talent. Lancaster strongly advised Booth against taking the television role, telling her that appearing in a weekly sitcom would ruin her reputation as a serious actress. He argued that once she became associated with a television character, audiences and critics would never again take her seriously in dramatic roles, effectively ending her career as a respected performer. Lancaster's warning reflected the common attitude of the time that television was artistically inferior, and that serious actors who moved to TV were essentially admitting they could no longer compete in film or theater. Despite Lancaster's dire predictions and similar warnings from others in her circle, Booth decided to accept the role of Hazel, largely because of the financial security it offered and because she genuinely liked the character. Her decision proved Lancaster completely wrong, as Booth went on to win 2 Emmy Awards for her performance on Hazel.